Hi guys, my name is Stiver, and this video discusses the most recent change to Uber unique drop rates and its implications for Diablo 4. So go get a cup of coffee, cola or champagne for New Year's sake, and let's go. I feel like it's quite likely that many of you are not perfectly up to date with every last change to the game, because it's the end of the season, usually there are no huge changes at this point, and the Christmas event that just got released is boring and uninspired to say the least. I think Gordon Ramsay would most definitely describe it as
bland.
So you have every reason not to listen carefully about what's currently happening in Diablo 4, at least until they start announcing details about Season 3, and I'm pretty sure they won't do that until the new year. Nevertheless, there's a slight chance you may have noticed a change that was recently made to the game, and that is the doubling of the drop rate of Uber uniques from Duriel. And this is what I wanted to talk about in this video, because this change has serious implications for both future and past events. Hardcore Diablo fans should very well know that doubling things in-game usually doesn't have the desired effect.
And then we doubled it.
But even those who are not old enough to get this reference may be concerned about this change. But even before we discuss the change, we have to talk about the system of Uber uniques dropping off of one single boss in the entire game, because this system is by itself very questionable, to say the least. Back when they announced that Uber uniques will be more accessible for the average player, everyone praised Blizzard for the decision, since when the game launched, the drop rate of these items was so microscopically low that literally only a few players in the world were lucky enough to get them. Anything was better than that system, so that's why everybody cheered when this was changed to Duriel being able to drop Uber unique items with around a 2% drop rate. Little did we know that this was another horrible system that players grew to hate over time. You see, in order to fight Duriel and have a 2% chance to get one of the items, players had to go through a soul-crushing grind. The time varies based on the class you play, but I think it's safe to say that at least an hour of farming was needed to summon Duriel once. Now, the number of summons can be multiplied by 4 if a player killed Duriel in a group, but still the problem remained. A long period of soulless grind for a very small chance for an actual good item. And believe me, 2% is a really small chance, especially if you wanted one specific Uber unique. You could easily have 5 to 800 Duriel kills without your target unique dropping, and you were able to get multiple other uniques that are literally useless for your class. Reddit was full of posts whining about how many runs they did without their desired unique dropping. The other types of posts were players posting screenshots about the items that they finally got as a proof of some kind of accomplishment. But is it really a huge accomplishment to farm a trivially easy to kill boss over and over hundreds of times? Players were frustrated, and rightfully so. Wouldn't it be much better if the Uber uniques could drop from any mob, but with a drop chance that doesn't restrict them to a handful of players in the world? Don't get me wrong, I think the addition of Uber bosses wasn't entirely useless. They served their purpose decently by letting players target farm regular unique items like Tempest Roar or the Malignant Rings. But tying Uber unique items to Duriel was, in my opinion, a huge mistake on Blizzard's part. Now, let's go back to the present, to the recent change applied to the drop chance of Uber uniques. The fact that developers made this change, especially in the middle of a season, upset a lot of people. First of all, this doesn't solve the problem of Duriel being the single, semi-reliable way of getting Uber uniques, but that's not the only problem. Let's see how some groups of players reacted to the change. Players who already acquired the uniques they wanted through the tedious grind without the buff may feel betrayed by Blizzard in that it's going to take half as long, but be still really boring, for the newer players to get the very same items. And please spare me the argument that players shouldn't care about what other players can do in-game. I don't want to get into it, but there's a way of thinking that everyone should ignore whether or not other players get any fair or unfair advantage because there are no leaderboards, so it basically doesn't matter how easy the others can achieve anything. I strongly disagree with this, as using this logic, you can justify basically any unfair advantage, such as duping being in the game, which is just ridiculous to me. Anyway, the second group of players are the ones who got their uniques by buying the Duriel summoning materials using gold or even real money. And I can assure you there are a lot of these. Now, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with buying materials with gold, but with duping being available to certain groups, the material price can become really low because of the sheer number of duped items being sold. So even though buying with gold is not something that is inherently bad, duping makes it questionable. As for paying real money to get summoning materials, I do understand the reason for it. People want to skip tens or hundreds of hours of grind required to get to Duriel by swiping their credit card. I understand the motive, but this is still bad for the game since this is obviously an example of pay to win and would ruin the game on the long term. The target group who are supposed to benefit from the double drop chances are the players who never got their uniques and plan to get them later in the season. However, at this late in the season, the number of these players is not high as Blizzard might think, and it's entirely possible that some of the players who never got their Uber uniques purposefully avoided the grind, which they will still have to do after the change. At least the gold price of summoning materials is expected to drop as a result of higher drop rates, so that's something, right? So, to sum it up, Blizzard have made a controversial change to a system that is objectively bad, while they could have redesigned the whole thing, or at least they could have waited for the next season to introduce the change. All in all, this is another entry to the long list of horrible decisions on the Diablo developers' part, and looking at this trend, they really have to do much better in order to compete with the upcoming Path of Exile 2. What are your thoughts on the subject? Do you plan to take advantage of the buff to Uber Uniques? Let me know in the comments. Have a great New Year's celebration and see you next time. Thanks.